Hello and welcome to another episode of the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast. This is John Jansen. My guest today is Becky Blades. She's an entrepreneur, writer, artist, and philosopher of creative, adventurous living. Since selling her first company, an award-winning public relations firm, Becky has studied what she has coined stARTistry, the art of creative initiative. She's also the author of a book we're going to talk about today, Start More Than You Can Finish, a creative permission slip to unleash your best ideas. So, Becky, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
I have to warn you that when my wife saw this book come through the door and saw the title, she said, "You're not allowed to read that book because nobody needs to give you permission to start more than you finish." So I have to tell you that, you have one person out there that thinks this is a terrible title to a book. So I'm sure that because it is sort of counterintuitive, right? I'm sure you're getting some similar pushback from people.
Exactly. But you are my people, John, and my people get it. And it's also tongue in cheek.
Right.
And my first book the title was Do Your Laundry or You'll Die Alone. And sometimes I ask people why they bought it and they say just the title. And they hated it, but they wanted to know what it was about. So I mean the bottom line is when our parents said all those things to us, don't bite off more than you can chew. It's not what you start, it's what you finish. They were likely trying to prevent us from making a mess, getting out the paint or starting a Legos project before dinner. And they did not accomplish getting us to finish more. They just got us to start less. So, beginning there, I'm not saying don't finish. Never anywhere do I say don't finish. But the more you start, the more you will finish.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to push back on this too much, but I know that some pushback you will get from people. I mean, is there a little
Certainly.
danger in then us just constantly treading water because, we have that mindset of like, oh, I'm going to go over here and do this now. Oh, I'm going to go over and do this now. And Lord knows there's enough things distracting us as it is.
That's a valid question. I think when we treat starting as a skill and a strength, which I think it is, then we will get better at kind of curating our ideas. I mean, you're an excellent curator of ideas. You don't, you've made a lot of stuff. I've only seen your finished stuff. So I'm sure that you have a lot of things that didn't get finished, but don't you think they led up to two things? One, you making better calls on the ideas that you do initiate. And two, they likely led to richness in new ideas and a courage. This is three things, a creative courage just to move forward.
Yeah, it also led to me having to add a detached garage to store some things in. But the money line from the book, my favorite line from the book that I wrote down is when we take action, we bump into answers. And I think that probably in some ways is the, at the heart really of what I think you're trying to say is that, sometimes you've just got to start some things before you realize like what's the right thing.
Exactly. And, does the idea have legs? And I mean, I think in organizations, especially, where you're sitting in a meeting and the goal is to make more money and it's time is money, and so the initial instinct is to shut things down, stay on the road. But we don't know what we don't know, and until we can answer a few questions, we don't really know what the idea is made of. And so what we do in organizations, and some of us personally, is we plan them to death. Yeah. And we all know, especially in lean organizations, that the finish is never what the plan originally designed. Yeah. It's hopefully better. So do we want to wait 2 months till the perfect plan is in place? Or is there a way that we can talk to the customer now? Is there a way that we can fashion a prototype now?
Yeah, I love these books that start out by saying you need to have your 10-year vision. That's to me, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a goal of what you want life to look like maybe in 10 years, but boy, how would you have a very clear vision of, in even next quarter sometimes it feels like.
Right.
You, I read in your bio the term stARTistry. You want to talk a little bit about how you what you mean by that, how you address that, what that implies.
Hmm. Well, stARTistry came out of the term Stardust, which came kind of out of a situation at home where my kids were trying to figure out what I was after I sold my first company. And I'm a visual artist. And after
Mhm.
I sold my first business, I came home and amped up the painting studio, and I was an artist, but I also had some, projects in the works. I was mentoring some entrepreneurs and stuff. And so every once in a while, they'd see me dressed up like a business person. And one daughter came down and said, Mom, what are you now? Are you a business person or are you an artist? And my other daughter from another room said, she's a stARTist. Or I think I said, I'm starting this and I'm starting that. So the other
Right,
kid
right, right.
said, she's a stARTist. And I love that word. And, you know, to your earlier points, not finishing things did not make me feel good. And I wasn't proud of, at that point in life, in my 40s, of all of the things that I hadn't finished. I didn't really know where they had taken me. So,
Mm.
um, but after some study of my own unfinished work, I realized that I am, if there's one thing I am good at, it's starting things. And I start pretty fearlessly, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. And I was starting to shame myself for some of that. So I started then to go the other way and to really try to find the the dignity and worth in that. And I found it in spades. Um, and it's just like the term artistry. It's this vague kind of it's a skill and a strength and an art, and I think it deserves its own word because starting is its own process.
So this is a little bit of a segue, or off-topic segue, I should say. But since you mentioned them, you certainly are a creative person. In fact, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the beautiful illustrations in the book. Should somebody get the book, which you did as well. But you've also raised a couple pretty creative kids, haven't you?
Yes, I have two daughters, and
Go ahead and brag because you've got some
yeah.
stuff to brag on.
Oh, well, they're both kind of in. Honestly, they didn't take after me. They took after their husband. Restart that. Honestly, they didn't take after me. They took after their dad, who
Yeah.
is a speaker and performer. I mostly write and do art in my basement. So one of them produces comedy shows and uh, musical improv at places like the Edinburgh Fringe, and then the older one, is a writer for the John Oliver Show. It's her dream job, and she just got it this year, and she won an Emmy for comedy writing. So she's and I talk about them both a little bit in the book because we had a lot of their statistic skills were inspiring to me. If they wanted to start a play, they'd start a play.
Well, so part of my point in going there is that I think a lot of people would look at what you're talking about as being a trait of a more creative person. Creative people are always coming up with ideas and new ways, and probably are more guilty of starting things that they don't finish. I don't have any research that
Mhm.
suggests that, but so how about that person that's out there going, yeah, okay, I can see the validity in this,
Mhm.
but I'm just not that creative.
Well, I think we all have to read up on creativity.
Right.
It's not art and music only. That's certainly the fun part of it, but creativity is problem solving. It's the product of our imaginations, and our imaginations are the best of our lives, I think. The best of us lives in our imaginations. So we come up with ideas that we might not think are creative out of the sum of our experiences, our knowledge, and so those ideas manifest only if we can be creative, because we've got to make something out of nothing. That's all creativity is walking up to a blank page. And anybody who does that has to admit that they're creative. Anybody who doesn't do that, I think, might have to admit that they're not living their best lives. It's so it's not, I know I started the book kind of thinking, ooh, I'm going to find the accountants who are poets and the I can't think of those
pick on
those very
engineers.
linear jobs.
Pick on engineers. They're easy ones.
But engineers, no, they're the inventors. Oh my gosh. I found out the most fascinating people are engineers, but they work differently. Their ideas emerge differently, and the creative process looks different for them. But the tinkering, I think we just need to kind of take this out of thinking that creativity is art. Now, you're, so I think I just learned this. Are you a woodworker or something? What's in the garage that you were just talking about?
I do. I build furniture. Yeah.
So, I mean, you are still, you're creative in your business, but I think of you foremost as a business person, but you're an artist as well. And can you see how your artistic skills in one area maybe helps you in the others?
Oh yeah. I'm not the problem. There's other people out there that we we have to work on. I have a whole
I see.
of musical instruments, on there.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right. So let's get back to, like, I'm sure there are people out there listening that, that 10 years before Uber was designed, had the idea for Uber, but just did nothing with it. So you hinted at this a little bit, but what do you think stops people, from taking action on or starting, things?
Yeah. Well, I think it lurks in the finish, whether or not they think they can take the idea where it needs to go. So if somebody has a big idea like that, they, honestly, we can start our smaller ideas easier than our big ideas.
Sure.
But, what I found, this was a survey of art students. I started asking them why they didn't start their best ideas, because I thought, these are creative people, they don't have any responsibilities. Do they have things they haven't started? And they all did, things they wanted to start that they hadn't. And I asked them some open-ended questions, and then I, pared it down to seeing that it was a question of enough. They didn't have enough confidence. They didn't have enough money. They didn't have enough space, physical space, whatever it was. There's a list of about 10 most common. But then when I ask, do you have enough just to start? The answer was always yes. And then they went to the work of figuring out, well, what is the start of a bridge mural? Oh, I guess it's a sketch. And then I guess it's getting permission to paint on the bridge, and once they start the momentum, it's just another whole process. I mean, that magical switch that flips everything from neuroscience to, Providence supports us in that.
You mentioned some of the reasons that they said not enough. I mean, I would say most entrepreneurs would say, I'm just too busy, to start something.
Not enough time. Not enough
exactly.
time.
Not enough time. So, I mean, like, if you are that entrepreneur that it actually, maybe your life or growth or whatever you want to call it, depends on you creating some new things. How do you prioritize? How do you decide if time is truly an issue?
Hmm. Well, I think we all have to build our own processes, and I talk through that in the book. One easy one is to chunk it down to the very smallest way you could begin and feel like the idea has a little spark. Um, but let's go back. The decision to start, uh, I think for busy people, has to start to, has to rely a little bit on a gut
Yeah.
and a process that you've set up and declared for yourself. Like one year I declared, I'm going to say yes to any idea this year that somebody else gives me, or that, how people are always saying, John, you should write a book about this. So I didn't say yes to any books, but my rule that year was if somebody suggests something and it's really doable, I'm just going to say yes. I'm not going to overthink it. So anyway, that is, I think the decision and picking the best ideas are key. And so somebody that just has says is at that place where I cannot handle one more thing, then and an idea comes along, and that might be the big idea, that might be Uber.
Yeah.
I think I think that's where we separate the men from the boys and the girls from the women, is you can delegate something. I mean, one guy runs GE. How does he get it all done? Delegation.
What a practice I've always had is that, whatever you have on your task list will fill up the day. And so, I've always time blocked,
Hmm.
impact time is what I call it,
Okay.
where I will intentionally, because I can get my to-do list done in 4 hours, or I can take 8 hours, if I don't have anything
Exactly.
else that's
Hmm.
planned for the day. But if I block off that, what I call impact time, I'm going to do it and I'm going to get my to-do
Yeah.
list done, faster. So I think that's a
Hmm.
practice that certainly worked for me in that
Hmm.
category.
So one other answer that one rule I set for starting new ideas is if it's going to overflow into another idea and make it better. So
Mm.
in
Yeah,
business,
yeah,
if
yeah.
I think of an idea that has a collaboration with somebody that's a good client, or somebody I could benefit from spending more time with, there's there's an ancillary benefit.
Yeah. It's a
And
natural multiplier.
I don't know why your time management thing made me think of that, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of killing two birds with one
Yeah, yeah,
stone.
yeah, yeah. One of the other things that I think, again, this idea of new ideas, innovation, comes for me. I can spend all my time talking to marketing consultants, and we're going to all talk about the same thing, and we're going to all copy what we're doing. So, what are some of your practices for getting outside that bubble? Because I think that's where innovation really comes from.
Right. Um, I think the ideation process is comes from ideation, and so we have to, you know, bark up some really strange trees. I think that's where our art and our extracurricular activities come in.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
also think cross training with other stARTists. So, just getting away from the business. And I recommend a thing I call a stARTist salon, which is something I just do. It's almost a book club group I have, where there's a musician, there's an inventor, there's um, a woman who has these cool pop-up book clubs. It's just people who are start things in different ways,
Yeah.
because I know I've learned things from doing my art that I apply to my business. And I think, well, what if, you know, I'm both people and getting ideas? What could I get from a lot of other people? It might feel like a waste of time. It might feel like a luxury, but I think it's a good practice.
I've, always tried to. I mean, I'm not the greatest at it now that I'm old. I'm really bad at it, but I really try to force myself into new things, new places, my book reading is so
Mm,
eclectic. I read about wolves and I read about calculus and I read about architecture, which, has
wow.
no,
Mm,
no no seemingly practical application for my work, but I always get amazing ideas, from those other places.
Exactly. Exactly. And
I
I
want to.
read, go ahead.
Oh no, no. I was just going to say I want to I want to end with giving you the opportunity, because I think that there is no question, like a lot of things, there are people that are wired this way, maybe, or they grew up
Hmm.
in an environment where it was very encouraged. I mean, and so it's not quite natural. But I think that not just imply, you say in the book that you can get better at this, that you can practice this, that this can become a habit. So talk a little bit about, how we practice.
Right. I think it's making a game of it. Start as many things as you can. Maybe keep a log. Um, uh, make it a 10 in a day. Start a
Yeah.
limerick. Start a conversation. Start acknowledging the things you're starting, because what I think people don't realize is how many things they're already starting and how much courage they're using to do that. And pretty soon the stakes of every start reduces. If you start 100 things in a week, the stakes of that one thing are
Yeah.
lower.
Yeah.
And so pretty soon, starting that big idea and talking to a person you've never talked to, part of it is muscle memory. It's like stage time when you speak. And in the book, I go to, I offer some examples. And it's hard to do this because you don't want to tell somebody sketch. You lose them, because if they don't
Yeah.
fancy themselves an artist, well, this is just for artists. So you really have to go into your own world and remember the things you started when you were a kid. I
Mm.
mean, we could all do a drawing. We can all do a limerick. We could, and after this book is launched, I want to probably start some kind of repository for those ideas so people can go on and have a menu.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I'm speaking with Becky Blades, the author of Start
Okay.
More Than You Can Finish. So, Becky, you want to invite people to where, I know the book's available in a lot of places, but where they might connect with you as well.
Yeah, go to beckyblades.com. That's Becky and blades like razor blades.
Awesome. Well, it was great catching up with you. I appreciate you spending some time with the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast, and hopefully we'll run into you one of these days out there on the road.
Okay. Thank you, John. I loved it.